It's the cry of generation. It's a stirring in our soul. It's dreams still in focus. It's hope still whole. For children that are and those who will be, our destiny is justice for once, for all, forever. Let it be. No more delays, denials can ignore our voices, nor suppress our choices. We come for all that God has gave, unashamed descendants of the indigenous immigrants and the once enslaved. For children that are and all those who will be, our destiny is justice for once, for all, forever. Let it be. Liberation when we read, love when we lead, moving at the speed of student needs, pushing against the abundance of oppressive greed. For children that are and all those who will be, our destiny is justice for once, for all, forever. Let it be. All right, Jennifer Holladay.
Vernon Jones.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good. We're here. You are here in the seat because we are talking with justice warriors, people who have been in the fight for justice, specifically for kids in the education space. You have a unique journey to where you are, right? You've done a lot of good stuff. So, who is Jennifer Holladay? And then I'll dive into some of the other stuff.
Jennifer Holladay is a white Southern lesbian who's also a mom. I did grow up in the Deep South. I've only been in Denver for 20 years.
What's Deep South?
Deep South. I was raised in Charleston, South Carolina.
Yeah.
And
What
you
was
can
that
hear
like?
it a little bit.
Oh, I can hear it. Especially like when you get riled up a little bit, you hear it more.
Yeah.
What was that like? Talk about that growing up.
Oh, I mean, it was, so I basically went to school in the 80s, and even though that's, 25 years after Brown, we were still in the trenches of DSEG in South Carolina at that point. And, my public elementary school was a situation where it was a school within a school. So it integrated, right, but we were in separate classes. And then in my 4th grade year, Mrs. Clausen's class was the first classroom I was ever in with black children. And vice versa, first time they were ever in classrooms with white kids.
What was that like?
I didn't understand all the grown-ups. I mean, I was 9, right? But I didn't understand all the grown-up hesitation.
Yeah, and that's why I asked that question.
I didn't understand.
Right, the grown-ups are
Yeah.
out here bickering, and the grown-ups are out here, we can't play together, and the kids are like,
Yeah.
do you want some paste?
Right, yeah, I mean,
You know.
that said, I mean, I grew up in a completely white world. My
Yeah.
church was white, my neighborhood was white, so, I mean, I can't say that, I wasn't part of the institution of segregation because, it was all around me, And then, when I hit puberty, my parents took me out of public school and sent me to a private girls' school.
Interesting. Was it in South Carolina? Oh.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my girls' school, our most famous graduate was Barbara Bush.
Oh.
And as my social studies teacher would say, we'll teach you how to marry well here.
Oh, okay.
So I didn't have a competency menu to graduate, but I did have to pass sewing and a grammar test. And my textbooks taught me about the war of, let me say it the way we said it,
Okay.
taught me about the war of northern aggression. So we didn't even call it the Civil War,
no.
right? So when we're having these conversations today about teaching true history,
Right.
I always think back to
Yeah.
the way that I was taught that history as a
Right.
child and how much I had to unlearn.
Right. We had someone I was talking to just the other day was talking about learning that history as someone growing up in Georgia, and the same thing that you just said. This war of northern aggression. Right?
Yes, yes.
It wasn't the Civil War. It was those.
That's right.
So.
I mean, Charleston's where the Civil War started.
Right,
And
right.
So,
So Jen, you
deep.
moved from that experience that you just shared as growing up, and go to college and end up where?
When I went to a historically white college in North Carolina called Davidson, and I had a professor there, Dr. Ruth. He taught a class on domestic terrorism, and at that time, what we meant by domestic terrorism was really the Oklahoma City bombing. 9/11 hadn't happened, all that stuff. It was just, actually, it was before the Oklahoma City bombing. It was like Ruby Ridge, but it was like Klansmen,
Right.
Klan groups, and militia organizations. And
right.
so, anyway, I learned about this organization called the Southern Poverty Law Center when I was in college. And it took me 4 years to get them to hire me, but eventually they did, and I worked there for 15 years.
Yeah. So I'll bring that up because justice has been a part of your bones, right?
Mhm.
Literally, you've seen some fights and some struggles that other folks hadn't, and it then also moved you into this education space. I think
Mhm.
when we first met, our paths crossed. You were here leading work in Denver,
Yes.
and the work that you were leading in Denver really was about creating new structures and systems, I would say, to deliver justice. It had not been realized. It still has not been realized. But you worked hard to try to do that. And what surprised you about the struggles that you had trying to do the right things for kids in the spaces that you have been in, especially in the education space?
I mean, institutions, traditions, bureaucracies are incredibly resistant to meaningful change.
Yeah.
And it's like the band can snap back in an instant, and I think probably this generation has seen that perhaps in their lifetimes, kind of with the pendulum swings that we've had with like Obama and Trump, just
Yeah.
kind of that. I mean, it can eat whatever side you're on with that, right? I mean, it goes back and forth, like the swings can just be enormous,
Yes.
you know? And so it really, the whole time, all the, I guess it's been 25 years now, it is literally like one step forward, at least one step. I mean, it's just, it's
11 back
it's
sometimes,
so
still
slow, right?
Yeah.
And I've been around long enough too to see the same stuff come back up and over again.
Right,
Right?
right.
Like the first things that I ever knew about Colorado in any real sense was like Tom Tancredo and all the wild anti-immigrant stuff.
Yeah.
And the focus on the family down in the Springs and the anti-gay stuff. Like that's what I knew about Colorado
Right.
when I was working at the Southern Poverty Law Center, you know?
Go Colorado.
Woo! But I mean, you know, Colorado's made a lot of progress
Yeah.
on those pieces, right? 25 years later,
Yeah.
you know.
So you come to Denver, and help me on my history. The portfolio model
Yes.
of schools.
Yes.
Where were you in that?
Mm.
I can't remember if you were the mother of it or if it was who was before. Because you know, there's so
Yeah,
many people
no, there were definitely people before
Well,
me.
I like to, you know, I like to.
There were definitely people before me. So the one that, and there were iterations before her, but like the person that I know sort of led the same kind of work was Alyssa Whitehead Best. She ran what was then called the Office
Osri.
of School Reform and Innovation.
Osri. We loved
Osri,
Osri.
yes.
So help me understand how you felt. What was the justice work that was being done there? Why was it important in your view that we had options for families, that we had choices for families, that we had a portfolio model for families? What has the justice been of that?
Yeah, I'm not sure that I knew enough when I took the job to fully understand the portfolio model.
Okay.
I think it took me a while to
Okay.
understand it in ways that I felt it could be used to like move the needle or
Yeah.
try to. I mean, I had done educational advocacy at the national level at Southern Poverty,
Yeah.
right? And what I learned is that it's a lot harder to like do that stuff on the ground. I remember way back in the day when the No Child Left Behind Act was first passed, like I wrote, I think I called President Bush like some horrible names in an essay that I wrote, right? But the good thing that NCLB did was that it made everybody disaggregate data, whether it was academic or discipline or whatever it was. And so
Why was that such a big thing? Disaggregating data. What were we hiding?
Because like it's like the elementary school that I went to. You can have a school within a school where
Right.
children are getting a fundamentally different experience in the same school building,
Right.
right? And I do remember reading about East High School in Denver when I was at the Law Center, because East was kind of exposed for having
Yeah.
just enormous opportunity gaps in
Right.
terms of the outcomes that school was creating for
Right.
children along the lines of race and
Right.
socioeconomic status.
So you would say part of justice is the true telling of data,
Yes.
right? If
Yes.
if you're withholding data,
Yes.
that's not justice.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to, I mean, it's one of the things I feel like we're sometimes missing nowadays. I mean, we have to have a shared set of facts that we can all agree are
Right.
facts,
Right.
right? And data is, now, people can manipulate data
Yeah.
every which way but loose,
Right.
right? And generally, like, there is data from our schools that, while it may not be perfect, it is data that we can agree is telling us something about how well or how not well our schools are serving children.
Right.
And so, you know, we've been, whether it's reform or pre-reform, like, or post-reform, whatever. I mean, what we know is that the system that we have, and that we've tinkered around with since NCLB and probably since A Nation at Risk, like, it's not really moving the needle for the
No.
kids who need us to move the needle the most.
Ann Rose sat in this chair, and Ann Rose said to us, "We've tinkered, we've not transformed."
Mm-hmm.
Why, in your view?
I think a lot of things go into it. I think part of it is, you know, public education systems, school districts are, they are like self-fulfilling prophecies, right? Like, they are entitled to kind of go on as they are in perpetuity, right? There's nothing that really kind of makes a district stop in its tracks and go, huh. I mean, a little bit, I think reform maybe ask that question a little bit in the sense of, like, if the district can't get it done for children, maybe they've lost the moral authority to run some of those schools.
Right.
And we should allow some other people to try to do it better.
Right.
But they have to do it better.
Right. That's the key. You have to be better.
You have to be better.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of that, right? But it's really hard to, like, interrupt a system that is self-perpetuating like that. The dollars are self-perpetuating,
Yeah.
the jobs are self-perpetuating, right? It's hard to get it to shift,
Right.
right? To actually transform.
Right.
I think I've been around long enough too that I can observe now that you put different people in the same seats, and oftentimes you're gonna get, things will look a little different here or there,
Yeah.
but they don't look fundamentally different.
Yeah. And it's heartbreaking, right?
Yes.
Because I know the work that you've pushed for, that we've pushed for, is just, sometimes you get tired because it just seems like you are, like you said, you're coming right back around to the same thing constantly, and it's like, is this ever going to change? We both, you know, justice delayed is justice denied.
Mhm.
And how long do we continue, to your point, allow public school systems to delay and therefore deny justice to the same students, and nobody step in and say enough?
Yeah.
Right? Is that day even possible in your view, that there would come a moment where we are so agitated with the consistent, perpetual failings that someone steps in? I don't know who this magical group of folks are, maybe it's us, who steps in and says, enough. We demand justice now. And not, you know, Dr. King says in his speech in 1963, I have a dream, you understand. He's like, there's going to come a day, and we're like, what are we, 60-some years, 61 years from that speech?
Yeah, the promised land's still looking pretty
Right,
far off.
and the promised land is looking far off. So when
Yeah.
do we are able to close that? I mean, literally 61 years from him giving that speech from the Lincoln Memorial and talking about a day that was going to come, and we're 61 years removed from that. This project talks about being, starting from 65 when we got, you know, Voting Rights Act, and Dr. King previous to that had said, give us the ballot and we'll change the world. Give us the ballot and we'll change these conditions. And we're looking and we're saying, okay, well, things are still looking pretty much like they did. So is there a moment, is there hope, is there optimism from you that justice can be realized in our day, or is this another 60 years we're talking about?
I mean, I don't want to be a party pooper, but like what I do know is that I am out of good ideas about how to shake up the system, which I think is one of the reasons why it's so important, like the kind of work that you're doing to get young people involved and leading in these conversations. I mean, and I don't know why it's coming to me, but like an area where I think we've all had enough. And we just need to call it and do something else, is special education, which our children of color are over-identified for, right? Some kids really do need those services, but it is the most regulated.
Yeah.
Like Congress, our own legislature, our school board, everybody's got policy about special education, right? And it has basically looked the same way since the precursor of IDEA got passed in the 70s, I think. And, by any measure, whether it's an academic measure, it is a discipline measure, it is an attendance measure, like, we know that what we are doing is not serving kids with disabilities, right? And it's one of the pipelines that feeds sort of the school to prison pipeline, right? And so, like, when literally are we going to say all of this regulation and all of this policy is actually hurting children?
Yes.
It's actually hurting kids, which is the opposite of the intent.
Right.
But SPED, or special education, is a good example of a place where, there's I can't remember the name of the book, Cage Busting Leadership.
Mm-hmm.
There's a line in that book that says, most policy is written for bad actors.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And so that's what often happens with SPED, and frankly, I think it's what sometimes happens with our other special populations, whether that be our kids of color or our LGBTQ kids or whatever, right? And when you're writing policy to protect against bad actors, you're always taking a deficit mindset.
Right, and you're 100%.
Right.
You're not writing to a justice end.
Exactly.
You're not writing a line with hope.
Exactly.
You're aligning with fear.
Yes.
Like, we've got to protect from the bad actors.
Right.
Instead of those who are actually in this to transform the system, to be life-giving, supportive, honoring the humanity of everyone who's involved in it. That's real, and that's what we have to. I mean, you go back to Dr. King. I mean, Dr. King is talking about the bad actors, and I have a dream that one day we won't really cater to the bad actors, and we'll cater to the reality. We want a world where kids are judged by the content of their character, not the color of their skin.
Yeah, don't forget all the other stuff that was in that speech.
Yeah, there's a great,
a little more
the
radical
front part,
than
the
that,
front
yes.
part is very much radical, right? Very much so, right?
Yeah.
He was a justice warrior for a reason,
Yes,
right?
he was. Yes, he was.
But it's to your point, is that we are catering to the extremes, right? The edges and the deficits, rather than I think the majority of us who are hoping and who are wanting a better world now.
I'm having a wondering.
Yeah.
So a wondering I'm having is, like, I have seen in the last 5 to 10 years that some folks have learned how to use asset-based language instead of using, like, the deficit narrative.
Right.
So, like, we've learned a new way to talk about it and sometimes to do it, But the evolution of that maybe is like justice embedded language, right? Because otherwise it's like asset-based is a mindset change, but it's not pushing enough.
Right.
When we think about what our systems face and what our systems are creating for our kids.
Right.
You know?
What is the hope in your heart? 5 years, 10 years from now, we will be where? For kids.
So I'm having a debate with myself these days about local control, right?
Yeah.
Because I think during my time in Denver, you know, I I participated in doing things to communities as opposed to doing things with communities sometimes. In a very patriarchal, the district knows best what to do in this moment kind of a way. And there are real benefits to like local control, whether that is a CSC at a school or an innovation zone or a district network or just a single school.
Right.
Like, or I'm not sure a school district is a unit of change, but a district like having more control over what it does, right? I mean, I do think that too many of the decisions that get made now are too far away from the communities.
Yeah.
Where all those policies and stuff get enacted on the ground, and
Right.
and that's a problem, you know? So part of me really hopes there is more community-based design of our schools, and I do think that schools are not static, and like redesign and reinvention needs to be a continual part
Yes.
of a community's life, because communities will shift. We'll see
Yes.
that's happening in Denver right now,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So new folks always have to be creating a different table for a conversation that's a different conversation because the
Yeah.
community is shifting,
Yeah.
right? So there's that. Part of me is thinking that, you know, local control, hyper-local control might be part of the solution, so we
Yeah.
can better actually meet the needs of specific school communities
Yeah.
and neighborhoods.
Just-
But there are dangers to it
Yeah,
too,
there
right? Because
definitely.
like, that means that we could have I don't know where that would happen in Denver, but I mean, we could have somebody teaching very problematic history in
Right.
another part of our city,
Yeah.
right? So there are some risks around, you know,
There's
what's tight and
probably
what's
some-
loose, right?
There's probably
But-
some justice parameters that I think you have to put into that, right? Because I do think, I agree with you, I think that justice looks like, and then we can read all the documents that we've read in the history.
Yeah.
Justice is, or remains, oppressed people group saying, we have the power to self-determine.
Right.
Please remove these barriers that are preventing us from self-determining. Right? And I think it applies to education, that you have families who are saying, we know what's best for our kids, or at least we want to be able to explore that with the people that we trust,
Right.
the school leader, our teachers, community supports. We want to be able to explore that.
Yeah.
And I think justice is that freedom to be able to just not be free just physically, but free completely to self-determine the reality that you want to live.
It's like Bell Hooks wrote that book many, many years ago, Teaching to Transgress.
Yeah.
Education is the practice of freedom,
Yes.
right? Like, I think that's what I would hope
Yeah.
our schools will become. They'll become places where education is the practice of freedom.
Again, we did this earlier, the happy fingers or the snaps that happen these days. Jennifer Holladay, thank you for this time. Thank you for coming in and just, again, sharing your brilliance with us and letting your light continuing to shine in the world. And, you know, I love you. I appreciate you. And so glad for all the trouble we've been able to get into
That's right.
over the years. You know, I was saying this with another person. I was like, we have a great relationship. And what's so great about the relationship to me is that we don't always agree.
No, we don't.
We don't always agree, but I think on methodology, but I think we always agree on the end, what is best for kids, and that's what's kept our relationship healthy, right?
so.
And allowed us to be able to grapple with. Now, Jen,
That and we're honest.
That's true.
We don't fib to each other.
That's true. We do not fit. We do not fit. So
That
thank you
helps.
for being here.
Thank you for having
Appreciate
me.
you. Thank you for joining us this week on the Justice Cast. If you are moved and inspired by what you heard this week, we need you to do justice by doing 3 things. Number 1, like and share this episode with your friends and family and network. Number 2, sign and share the Do Justice Pledge. And 3, join us for an upcoming Do Justice action. You can find those listed on our website at www.faithbridgeco.org. That's www.faithbridgeco.org. Remember, the world we believe for is possible. Do justice.
Thank you to Jennifer Holladay for being our guest this week. Thank you to our funders and sponsors. Join us next week when Vernon sits down with President of Denver Families for Public Education, Pat Donovan.